Today on the Big Podcast, we talk with Billy Sheehan from Mr. Big. They have a new record dropping in July called Defying Gravity. We talk about his experiences in the 90s after grunge took over, the biggest gig he's ever played, as well as a gig where they opened up for Aerosmith with his band Talas back in the 80s. Aerosmith actually called themselves something different. Oh, and I can't forget about the story involving Mike Patton from Faith No More. That and much more coming up today on Radio Chatter with Billy Sheehan.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff.
This is Radio Chatter with WRIF's own Meltdown.
Yeah, my voice might be a little bit worse for the wear today, but, that happens. Seether played in Detroit last night, and I might have stayed out just a little bit past my bedtime with Sean and some of the guys from the band. And, those kind of things happen, I suppose. Anyways, talking with Billy Sheehan today, and the good thing is, not only that we're talking to Billy Sheehan here on Radio Chatter, but that you want to put up with this voice, because I taped this interview last week, so a much smoother-voiced Meltdown will be involved in this interview. Like I said in the intro, the new record, Defying Gravity, comes out in July, and Billy gave me permission to play the brand new single, which we will at the end, in case you haven't heard this yet. Pretty cool stuff from these guys. We talked about the 90s, the big gigs he's played, and like I said, that story involving Mike Patton from Faith No More. He doesn't talk about it a lot, but maybe I'll talk about it a little bit more after the interview. But it was definitely a wild time, and you can actually Google the Mike Patton incident in Buffalo, New York in, 1991 or 92 or something like that. Anyways, without further ado, so you don't got to listen to this scratchy voice for the next few minutes, this is my interview with Billy Sheehan. I gave him a call. In recent interviews, he had been doing his interviews. I guess there was a Skype interview, and his cat was on his lap, so I asked him about that right off the get-go. First of all, you got any special guests sitting on your lap today for this interview or no?
No, she's upstairs sleeping on her spot number 4.
How many cats do you have, or how many animals do you have?
Just one, just Spooky. She's a handful.
All right, there you go. Hey, coming to town June 3rd, I should say, at the Token in Westland. The new CD, Defying Gravity, drops on July 7th. I was going to ask you about the release date, but I just saw that yesterday. Is that right, July 7th?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, and tell us about this upcoming CD.
Well, it's a bunch of songs that we came up with. The one special thing about the entire process is that we got back to our original producer, Kevin Elson, and he was the guy who produced the first 4 Mr. Big records, our biggest successes that all of us have ever had. So we're very happy to be back working with him again, and he was just a joy to work with and kind of brought us all back to how we started, yet with still many experience underneath our belt since those early days.
Yeah. Speaking of those early days, I think there's a song on there, if I'm not mistaken, called 1992, which talks about those early days. Is that right?
It does, kind of in a way like Smoke on the Water was Purple making their record at one point when the studio burned down. So similar, it was a little slice of history for us when we had a number 1 single and all the things it did for us and what was surrounding us at the time. And I always tell people when I do seminars or bass clinics, I wish all of you have a hit record someday, because it is an incredibly life-changing experience.
Yeah, the verse actually finishes up with "I was number 1 in 1992," if I'm not mistaken, on the that song right there. I was just talking with Bill Leverty from Firehouse last week, and those guys were kind of like in the same shoes as you guys. You guys formed in the late 1980s. You put a record out, and then, of course, 1992 hit. You guys had a big hit with "To Be With You," and then, of course, the chainsaw known as grunge came around. And tell everybody about your experiences through that time.
Well, we had played a lot outside the USA. I'm not sure exactly why, but there was opportunities there to play South America, play in Europe, play in Southeast Asia, to play in Japan. So we took those opportunities and made the most of them. It was incredible to fly off to some exotic land and have thousands of people waiting at the airport for you and do an in-store, and 8,000 people show up when they expected 500. So it was pretty an amazing time. Indonesia was an incredible experience for us. I still get more email from Indonesia than anywhere else in the world. And it was quite a transition when the grunge thing happened. I was, in a way, as much as it hurt me and my band and the type of music I play, I was kind of glad to see a new order come in, because things were kind of on automatic, which I didn't like. Bands would go to the record label with a demo. The record label would give them a huge amount of cash. They'd make their record, they'd make the video, they'd go on tour, and there they were. And it wasn't really, they weren't really, it didn't seem real to me. It seemed generated from above as opposed to created from below on the streets, in the clubs, and then to rise up to a good point, which a lot of the grunge did to me.
Yeah, that's interesting.
You know what I mean? So as much as I was sad to see one type of music go away and a new one come in, I've seen it before. I'm old enough to have seen that transition happen several times throughout the years. So, but fortunately for us, because we had developed so many foreign markets, it didn't touch us at all. And I remember Mr. Big outsold Pearl Jam in Japan. The statistic was 40-1.
Wow. You had to get one of those shirts that says "I'm huge in Japan."
Well, and even like in Italy, there was like 5 Mr. Big copy bands playing around Italy, in Germany, and France. You know, we had, like I said, Indonesia and other places. So people go for the cliche Japan right away, but in fact, Brazil was crazy. We played a show on the beach in the Santos Beach outside of Sao Paulo. And they didn't know how many people were going to show up, but unknown to even us at the time, they were using To Be With You on one of the soap operas during the daytime in Brazil, and it was huge. So we go to the beach expecting, well, it would be nice to play in the sun on the beach, and there's 100,000 people showed up. So it was a local band, the Lemonheads, Henry Rollins, and Mr. Big, and it was they had to bring the military in. The police left. The police gave up. They actually literally brought military trucks so we could see off the distance of showing up at the beach to try and clear it after the concert with huge bonfires going. It was one of the biggest shows I ever played in my life. And that was Brazil. So it was, I guess we should get a T-shirt Big in Brazil.
There you go, yeah. I can't believe that. Lemonheads, Henry Rollins, and Mr. Big. I don't know. That'd be something in the United States, that's for sure.
I love that. When I first started going to shows, they mixed all kinds of different bands together, and everybody loved everything.
Yeah.
I remember Aerosmith opening up for John McLaughlin and the Mahavishnu Orchestra. Cool.
Now we're from the same part of the country, and I remember, at least I heard. I'm near my late 40s now, but I heard Aerosmith played at a bar one night as Dr. Something and the Medics. Now, did you guys open up for them?
Dr. J. Jones and the Interns.
Is that what it is? Okay.
We played. The club was run by a guy who was our manager. He was a local promoter in Buffalo, and he eventually went on to get into the movie business. And his name was Harvey Weinstein.
Right.
He's probably the biggest guy in Hollywood right now. But he was the Talas manager. I swear to God, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
We opened up for Aerosmith there. We did a bunch of opening slots. We opened up for UFO one time. They were trying to come over the border at Canada. They didn't have their papers right, so they couldn't get in. Initially, they were touring with AC/DC. They came in on their own, and then Talas opened up, and that's how I met Michael Schenker, ended up working with him, and then ended up playing in UFO a few years later also. So those opening slots were always a fertile ground for making connections.
Now, I heard that you guys, of course, opened up like 30 shows with Talas. For people that don't know who Talas is, they should go on YouTube and check it out because, Sink Your Teeth and Seesaw and all these songs, they're just great songs. But so you guys opened up like 30 shows with Van Halen, and that's probably where you meet Dave, I suppose, right? And I think I heard a story once where you were actually asked to join Van Halen at one point. Is that true?
Yeah, I lied about it and kept it quiet for years because I love Michael Anthony and I didn't want to make it to me, it would seem kind of disparaging to say that they wanted to get me in the band, disparaging to him, and he's a wonderful guy and a dear friend. But now that everything is kind of passed on, I did finally reveal that right from the very first tour, Eddie gave me his number and said, "Don't tell Michael." And later on, I would go to their shows on subsequent tours to say hello and stuff like that. And Eddie took me back to a back room one time and said, "What would you do if I asked you to join Van Halen?" And I said, "Well, what flight do you want me on?" And so it went from there. And then later on, also now living out now, me up to the studio there, and I did jammed a bit with Ed and Alex, and we were going to do it again. So at about 3 different occasions, they talked to me about joining the band, which is a great honor. Completely. But again, as I said, Michael Anthony is awesome. I love his playing. I love his singing. He is the bass player for Van Halen. As much as I would have loved to have been in my favorite band probably ever, who knows what the fans would have done to me too. I could have gotten strung up. but what a great honor. I love all those guys. I'm actually the only guy in the world that's ever played with every member of Van Halen.
That's awesome. Just thinking about it, when Dave formed that band with you and Steve Vai and stuff, that was probably the best 80s rock band outside of Van Halen. I mean, seriously, musician-wise, it had to have been.
Well, thanks. We had a riot in that band. It was so much fun. Dave was great to us from the get-go. We were kind of like we were a band. We hung out together. We sat around and told stories and everything. It was just one of the greatest moments of my life and the biggest breaks of my career by far.
Mm-hmm. Now, I was talking to Dave Constantino yesterday, who I've known for years. I did my first demo tapes with him in his studio in Western New York when I was 18 to get on the radio. So this is a long time ago. I've been in the radio business now for 27 years. But that show you guys do with Talas in July of 2012 is one of my favorite events of the last several years. Outdoors. They couldn't have been better that night.
It was a wonderful night. 14,000 people. The Hard Rock Cafe was just great. I love those guys, Dave and Paul. I hope in the future we can do more together. I know there's a couple little health issues going on with Paul, and I hope he's doing better. And I would, for me, that's the real Talas, and that's who I'd love to play with again. If we ever got the opportunity to, it would be wonderful.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, man, one of my favorite bands growing up, no question about that. I talked to Richie Kotzen a couple weeks ago. He says Winery Dog's kind of on hold. Do you like the fact that you're in so many projects that you can kind of jump from project to project and you're always kind of doing something?
Yeah, it's great. I live to play live, and as long as I'm in any kind of entity that I can go out and get up on stage, I'm pleased about that. So the Winery Dogs is probably my favorite band ever to play live with. It's just so much fun. I enjoy playing with Richie and Mike so much. So Richie's doing his thing, Mike's doing his thing, I'm doing mine. We're going to get back together ASAP and work on a new Winery Dogs record, which is makes me very happy.
Yeah, that's cool. So Mr. Big coming to town on Saturday, June 3rd at the Token in West End. Of course, the tour's going through the summer. You got some dates in South America as well. That's got to be fun to hit up South America during the summer then, like you were just saying a little while ago.
Yeah, actually, it's the winter for them. So
yeah, that's right.
It's a little cooler. It's reverse land. It's backwards land.
Yeah, no kidding.
But we do great down there. It's wonderful. We shot a recent DVD of the Winery Dogs in Santiago, Chile, and it was just the place was totally sold out and crazy. It was a great night. And Brazil, of course, would be in Colombia. I'm sure Buenos Aires, Argentina, and each country is kind of a whole different world too. It's really a great experience. Then we'll be in Southeast Asia, possibly Australia this tour, which I'm very excited about, and then a lot of shows in England and the UK too. So it's going to be a lot of frequent flyer mileage for me this year. Well, for the last thing here for you, Billy, and I really appreciate the time. Like I said, I want to take you back to the early 1990s, and I was standing there talking to you one night at a 97 Rock party, and Faith No More went on the stage. You know where I'm going with this? I remember that. And I'm talking to you, and someone comes up to you and says, I don't know, your manager or assistant or whatever, and says, Mike Patton's got his pants down. And he inserted the microphone into an area that we normally would not be speaking of in public.
And that's right. And then he proceeded to put it in his mouth, and then bottles started flying towards the front of the stage. I'll never forget that moment.
It was, when you're on stage and you're an entertainer, you take some chances. He took a chance, and you roll the dice, and sometimes your number goes up, and sometimes it doesn't. So, unfortunately for him, I like that band very much, and it was a strange situation for them. It's who knows what was behind it. It's just a crazy world.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, I really appreciate the time. June 3rd, like I said, at the Token, and Faith No More. We could talk about that for a few more minutes, but I'm not going to put everybody through that. So, Billy, I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you, and give my best to everybody back in Western New York if you were in that area again. And thanks for your time today.